Hello and welcome to the Men for Life podcast. I'm Sean Corcoran, CEO of Men for Life. For too long, men have been told to remain silent on the sidelines of the abortion debate. But silence and passivity in the face of evil is a rejection of God's call to biblical masculinity. Men for Life is replacing the old narrative with a new truth. Real men are protectors, providers, pro-family, pro-woman, and pro-life. Today, my guest is Mike Seibel. Mike is a pro-life attorney based in New Mexico, and his extensive legal work, particularly in holding abortionists accountable and advocating for pro-life legislation, has been instrumental in advancing the cause. Mike's contributions have been recognized in various local and national media outlets, and today is the 10th anniversary of the day that Mike began working in the pro-life movement. How are you today, Mike?
I'm extremely blessed. I can't tell you how blessed by God I have been over the last 10 years.
Well, we are very happy to have you here, and congratulations on 10 years working in pro-life. 10 years is a long time. Can you kind of walk us through briefly the 10 years and what are the biggest accomplishments that you've had or the things that you're most proud of in that 10-year period?
Wow. The thing I'm most proud of is I got involved. I mean, action is the key. Masculinity requires action. That's what we need to do in life. And my actions are my biggest accomplishments. So way back in 2015, I was in the middle of a divorce. I was depressed. I was horribly, being the victim at that particular time. And somebody came up to me and said, you know what? They're selling body parts at the University of New Mexico. And I sat down, I prayed heavily. I remember right before I was praying, the person handed me an article by Karen Garnett, where we had a person by the name of Curtis Wayne Boyd, and I can get into his accomplishments and who he is a little bit later, but he was doing late-term abortions in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And in that article, he said, yes, I know I'm killing, and I'm sending the spirit of these pregnancies back to God. That article was 6 years prior to when I got involved. It was written by Karen Garnett, who I know now, wonderful pro-life activist. And it got me so mad. I sat there and prayed and I said, I got to do something. Well, somebody's got to do something about it. Somebody ought to stop this guy. Why can't we stop this guy here in Albuquerque, New Mexico? And that little voice in the back of your head said, you know what? You can do this. You're a licensed attorney. This is what you need to do. You need to take on this cause. You need to stop it. And I walked outside that day and I said, you know what? I'm going to do something big to him, who is now my computer guy, but a former seminarian in the church. And I said, I'm going to do something big. And he said, what are you going to do? And I said, I don't know what, but I'm going to do something big. So I got involved. We did the investigation on fetal tissue sales out of the University of New Mexico from Curtis Boyd. That happened in 2015. We shut down one of the biggest late-term training programs in the country in 2015 that Curtis Boyd was doing. We got 2 criminal referrals against Curtis Boyd for the sale of body parts. Oddly enough, this is the 9th anniversary of that on June the 23rd of 2016. We got that referral. I got him fired from the university. We started to litigate that for a long period of time. We helped women whose bodies parts were given away across this country or sold across this country to a 19 university network. We shut down that network in 2018. We've stopped the body part sales at the University of New Mexico in 2018. In 2017, a woman by the name of Keisha Atkins died. We held Curtis Boyd accountable for those actions, what he did to Keisha Atkins and caused her death from a late-term abortion in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Shortly after that, I got involved with suing Planned Parenthood on the sidewalks for their security guards doing a couple of things. Just giving you a 20,000-foot overview, but I also then started to get involved with the Comstock Act and the litigation of creating sanctuary cities for the unborn here in New Mexico and bringing the Comstock Act up to the state Supreme Court. Hopefully someday we'll get to the national Supreme Court to outlaw abortion nationally. I worked with Jonathan Mitchell and Aaron Hawley on those that litigation. So I've been truly blessed to do this, and I love everything. But eventually, the crowning jewel of the entire thing, which is something I posted on Facebook today, is that I shut down a late-term abortion center, the biggest late-term abortion center in North America, not by an election, not by legislation, not by anything else, but by pure litigation, just against Curtis for the last 10 years. And I think it's having an effect all across this country because I don't think late-term abortionists who do outpatient can get insurance anymore. I haven't, verified that, but it is my suspicion that's why Warren Hearn is closed down, and I think we have the opportunity to further that in the future.
So, you mentioned Curtis Boyd repeatedly, and it's almost like in a story where we have the hero and the villain. Curtis is the villain, right? And I think it's really important for those people that don't know who Curtis Boyd is to understand that he truly is a villain. So can you give us a little background on Curtis?
Let me explain who Curtis is. Curtis is my nemesis. He's become my nemesis over the years. He's my villain in my story. I guess I'm his villain in his story. But what Curtis has done is back in 1965, he converted from being a ordained Baptist minister to an ordained Unitarian minister. And he worked at the First Unitarian Church in Dallas, Texas. Why that's important is the first meetings of Norma McCorvey, Linda Coffey, and Sarah Weddington were at that same church. So Curtis was most likely involved with the beginnings of Roe in Dallas, Texas. He did 10,000 illegal abortions in Athens, Texas. He then moved
and I apologize for cutting you off, but just for anyone that's not familiar, can you tell us who those three ladies are?
Oh, the three ladies are Norma McCorvey is Jane Roe. She is the plaintiff in the Roe versus Wade. Linda Coffey is one of the two attorneys that filed Roe versus Wade, and Sarah Weddington is the other attorney that filed Roe versus Wade. So, I mean, they all met out of this same church in Dallas, Texas, that continues to honor Curtis Boyd to this day, and it claims to be the founding place of Roe versus Wade. So this all started in Dallas and in Texas, Athens, Texas, which is just 2 hours south of Dallas. Curtis started there. It was his hometown. He did 10,000 illegal abortions, he admits to, in Athens, Texas. Well, Curtis has gone on to unbelievable fame. He's a folk hero of the abortion movement. He's done 250,000 abortions himself. That's him personally. His clinics have done over 700,000. That's 1% of Roe, all by himself, that he oversees. Not only did he do that, he claims to be the inventor of the D&E abortion. He started the Ryan residency program with Philip Darney. He has taken over the clinics for George Tiller, who was the biggest late-term abortionist prior to him. When George got shot, he brought his entire staff to New Mexico. He is a founder of the National Abortion Federation. His wife was the president. He was named Humanitarian of the Year in 1989 by the National Abortion Federation. He's been in a variety of different movies. He is the godfather of abortion in this country. There is nobody worse than Curtis Boyd. Nobody even comes close. When we look at Gosnell killed maybe 40 or 50,000 people himself. Nathanson, maybe 60 or 70,000. Hearn and Carhart, both in the 40 to 50,000 range. Nobody has killed more people in this world, well, at least in the United States, than Curtis Wayne Boyd.
250,000 abortions.
250,000 lives taken. And, that's astronomical. Think about, what we had 57,000 deaths in Vietnam of servicemen. That's 5 times that amount, essentially. I mean, a city of Las Cruces, New Mexico is 100,000. It would be like wiping 2.5 of those cities off the map. I mean, the carnage is absolutely horrible. And, if I had known that when I was gone into this, I think I might have paused a little bit before I got involved with somebody who's killed so many people. But thankfully, God protected me, and I didn't know that until later in my litigation with him.
Yeah. Because it's daunting, like and it's disturbing, right? It's like, what am I getting into? This is the den of evil,
Well, think about it. I don't know if you've ever heard this, but abortion is the sacrament of the devil is what they've always told me. I mean, just imagine how many sacraments there are to the devil just by this man alone. I mean, this is pretty deep spiritual warfare that you get into, and trust me, it's been a spiritual warfare for 10 years against Curtis.
And he frames it based on what you said a little while ago. He frames it almost like it's a spiritual thing when he says, I know that I'm sending this. This is the words that I think you use. I'm sending the spirits of the pregnancy to God
With love and acceptance. Yes.
with love and acceptance.
That's not only that, but when we deposed him, he talked about service among self and how he was doing a service for women and how he was a champion for the women's rights in the situation. He really thought he was doing good by killing all these people, even up to the date of birth. I mean, we've published his depositions over the years. I've given them to Live Action, Priest for Life. They have these and they publish them, and you can see it out there. It says, you know, there is no limit on the abortions he would do at the time that we took his deposition. Now he's closed here in Dallas, he's closed in Dallas and here in Albuquerque, but and he's limited in Florida where he has a small practice now. But I mean, he was doing abortions up to the date of birth here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I don't think you can find much more sinister people in the world than a late-term abortionist that will do something all the way up to the date of birth.
It's such a disturbing statement that it's hard for me to come up with the next question.
It's a little bit shocking
because it's a big deal, you know, and people will say that doesn't happen. You know, they will say, well, you know, just because the state, and this happens still, the states are passing laws which remove any restrictions on timeframes for abortions. So up to 9 months, right? And they say, well, that's not going to happen. Well, if it's not going to happen, why do you need the law? You know, why do you need a law protecting it to happen if it's not going to happen? Because it happens. But
not as much as it used to, but it does happen
right.
quite a bit.
Do you think that the reason that it doesn't happen as much as it used to is, you know, the exponential growth of the abortion pill?
No, I don't. You know, one of the things that I learned in late-term abortion, and my clients, a lot of them are late-term abortion still, because I still have a couple of cases left before Curtis shut down his practice. You know, 24 weeks or higher. I mean, Keisha Atkins was at 24 weeks. The current claim I've got right now is a 26-week-old baby, perfectly healthy, nothing wrong with them. They walked into the clinic and wanted a late-term abortion. And the reasons aren't that much different than what they have for a regular abortion. They just wait longer. And a lot of that happens because women break up with their boyfriends. They lose a job. Their life changes. You know, when you're pregnant, if you don't have a man who's going to help lead you, it's a daunting task. And when you break up with that man, you don't want to have his baby. So they go into the clinic as late as 8-9 months in this situation. So, I mean, there are other reasons, fetal anomalies. I'll tell you, there's no really good reason to go through a late-term abortion for a medical reason. I don't see it. I think the cesarean section would be much better from an attorney malpractice standpoint. So fetal anomalies and you know, just voluntary late-term abortion. I'm pregnant and I want to kill my baby. Happens more often than you think. In our litigation, it compromised about 80% of Curtis Boyd's practice.
You said something really interesting. You said that that when, you know, pregnancy, I mean, a relationship breaks up, and then, you know, the mom is concerned about doing it alone, about not doing it with the dad, about, you know, the bad relationship and not wanting to have a child with the person they're not in a relationship with. And, you know, it made me think about how about that whole argument, whether it's late term or early term, about, you know, not having somebody to help with the baby, having to do it on your own. That is a genuine concern that many women have whenever they make the choice for abortion.
Well, not only do I practice law, I do all this, but when I go out to the sidewalk, and I do go out to the sidewalk on occasion, especially when I go back to DC, I love going out to the sidewalk because I'm not suing anybody right now in DC. I might in the future, but I'm not. Or if I'm out of town, I'll go to the clinics there. One of the things that really surprises me, and this is why I'm glad you bring this channel up, is when I'm talking to the people, I don't go talk to the women. I'm useless. I'm an old man. I'm not going to make any hearts and minds change in this situation. Where I go is I go to talk to the men. This is one of my favorite things to do when I go to the sidewalk. And I'm like, hey, dude, what's going on, man? You're here. You're a Raiders fan. You're whatever fan you are in this situation. I'll talk to him about the sports team. Why is your girl in there, man? She goes, well, it's her choice. And I said, did she ask you your opinion? And then he said, yeah, I do. I just told her I'll do whatever she wants to do. And I was like, well, dude, is that leading, man? Are you masculine? Are you a man? I mean, you want this baby, right? And he goes, yeah, man, I want these babies. I want this stuff. I said, well, why don't you go tell her that? A lot of the times why women are in that place is they turn to their boyfriend, who is the most influential person in their life in making that decision, and say, what should we do? And the boyfriend goes, oh, I don't know. What do you want to do? What a man should do is say, you know what, babe? We're going to do this together. We're going to do this as a partnership. We're going to do this, and we're going to make sure we can raise this baby. Whatever comes our way, we'll handle it. We got this. That's leading. Leading is not, what do you want to do? Oh, I don't know what you want to do. Where do you want to eat? I don't know where I want to eat. Women are complaining about this across the country with men right now. And it's our job as pro-lifers and as men to step up and teach other young men. This is something that we should do. We need to lead. No woman, I don't care how feminist she is, wants a guy who can't lead on a dance floor, much less in their life.
So how do you think that we that we get that message across, that we get to the point where we're helping young men to not only understand that, but to embrace it, right? To understand what it means to be truly masculine. In our conversations prior to recording, you brought up Andrew Tate. I bring up Andrew Tate. I don't know much about Andrew Tate except that he is the antithesis of masculinity. Like, he is failed masculinity in a picture, like not even in a picture, in a caricature, right? So
in a sense.
So how do we get men to understand what it means to be masculine, but to be excited about that idea, especially when many of these young men didn't have a dad, had a bad dad, had an abusive dad, have no positive male role model in their life to look at and say, this is what it means to be a man. It makes me think about Matt Walsh going around asking people, what is a woman? And I almost feel like if you were to go out into some of these communities and say, what is a man? You'll get a lot of answers that have nothing to do with what it means to be a man.
We need to start highlighting men. I mean, generally in this situation, what Andrew Tate, why he's successful is he is got something that the men are looking for. I go to the gym, I see it every day. They're looking for some guidance. He's 38 years old. He's a fighter. He goes out and he fights. He's an MMA fighter. And if we look back to our childhoods, I mean, if I look back to mine, I grew up with the comic book heroes in this situation, Star Wars, good versus evil. It was great to go. Nobody wanted to be Darth Vader. Everybody wanted to be Luke Skywalker. We look at our films, even in the early 2000s, The Kingdom of Heaven, you had Orlando Bloom who taking on the entire Saracen army. You had Die Hard with Bruce Willis taking on a highly technical terrorist group by himself. You had Troy, where Brad Pitt was taking the beach by himself. We had these fighting mentalities, these role models in society. We go back to the Bible. Who are our role models? You look at Elijah, who takes on 450 demons. David, who takes on Goliath. Noah, who creates an ark and brings a new world. We don't emphasize these things in masculinity anymore in the Bible. When I go to church, I don't hear about Elijah fighting 450 demons anymore. I don't hear about people marching around in a Jericho walk unless it's abortion related. Nobody speaks out. We have to lead by example, and going out and doing this and fighting this and doing this. Frankly, I didn't grow up thinking, I want to be a pregnancy center director. I wanted to be a superhero. The pregnancy center directors are superheroes, but we have to be able to show how they're fighting this. And we have to, as both Christians and as men and as pro-lifers, find something that appeals to these young men. like the White Rose Rescue is doing a really good job of appealing to these young men right now. We have to do it legally. We have to do it smart. We have to do it in a way that brings results. And men want to do action. How do we do that? We need groups like your group in this situation to go out there and say, yeah, we're doing this as men. We're helping out the pro-life leadership. We have examples of men doing great stuff. Dr. Lyle, the people from the White Rose Rescue. We have these people doing great stuff. You can do it too. And
Right.
we can help you. And that's what we're here for.
So what would you say are the values that a masculine man holds dear?
A couple of things. Not only protecting and providing, those are obviously essential things in this situation, but one is remaining calm in the face of adversity, not losing your cool. Perseverance is another huge asset of a masculine man. You look at other things that are more masculine at their core is taking action rather than just speaking. Masculine men walk the walk. They don't just talk the talk; they walk the walk. They do what they say they're going to do. Honesty, commitment, setting boundaries not only for yourself but for the people around you, so that they do not run over you. There are a variety of different things that the masculine men can do, and I could go on an entire show about how we could do that. In getting these young men and with older men who are more masculine than this current generation, and teaching them these particular values. I mean, women want to be able to trust their men. If you look right now, there was a study by JP Morgan Chase that 50% of women are going to be single and childless by 2030. 50% of women between 15 and 44 are going to be single and childless. That means we're failing as men more than anything else. We are not being trustworthy masculine men who will take action, who will be honest with them, and who will do the right things to protect and provide for their women.
Right. And you've got part of the problem is that you've got these women who will project that they don't need a man. If I post something that says real men protect, I mean, I'll get a dozen at least comments from women saying, who are you that you need to protect me, and what are you protecting me from? I don't need your protection. And I think that we've got, maybe two opposing forces going on. One, that they've never had the impact of a real man, because protection doesn't mean, hey, you sit here in the corner and I'm going to go take care of everything. It just means, hey, I'm going to make sure that you're taken care of. It comes with compassion. It comes with love. It's not about dominance. It's about leadership, like you keep saying. And so we've got that going on. And then we've got men, young men who have never had that leadership and don't know how to do it. And so they are not there for the women who know they need it. And so if you've got 50% of women who are going to be single and childless by 2030, then like you said, that's a failure of men, because what are they doing that is not leading these women to say, hey, like, this is what I want out of life?
A lot of times we confuse leading women with a lot of different other things. One of the things I've actually started doing is to take salsa lessons. And I've never danced before in my life, but to lead a woman in salsa is like one of the hardest things that I've ever done in my entire life. But if you lead her correctly, you're not noticed. She's dancing around. She looks incredible. She's got, the beauty, the style, everything else, but you're not noticed. But you have to lead her in order for that to happen. If you've seen a good dancer on the dance floor, you never notice the guy. You notice that girl and what she's doing and everything that's going on. But he's directing it. But he is making her the star of the entire situation. That's his job. But he is truly in charge of what's going on. Because if you go to the dance floor and you see people who are unable to be led by men, women who do that, or men who can't lead women, it's a mess on the dance floor, even a regular salsa thing. So we have to learn how to lead. And believe it or not, I think every pro-lifer should take a salsa class. Every man should take a salsa class just to learn how hard it is to lead a woman, because it is very, very difficult. You have to be thinking ahead and knowing what you're doing every step of the way.
I like that you said leading is making her the star of the show, because that comes with so many different components, right? She has to feel safe in order to let you lead in that point. I've not tried salsa dancing. I've seen salsa dancing, and it looks incredibly hard. And it looks like a lot of fun for people who don't have two left feet. But I mean, she's got to feel safe to allow you to lead, and to believe that she's got to have that confidence, that she is a star of that show. And to have that confidence, she has to believe that you believe that she is a star of the show. And so it is about something greater. It's about, it's not about protecting by putting her in the corner. It's about protecting by lifting her on a pedestal, and making sure that she knows that she deserves to be there.
It's not only that, but it's also communication that takes place that you have to learn. If you mess up and you have a very hesitant or a very, how would I put it, indirect communication with your dance partner, you are going to look awful. She's going to look awful. You're going to look awful. Everything goes haywire if you don't have those direct communications with her that are not confusing, not hesitant. This is what a man does. He makes those movements very, very clear to her, so she knows how to react and do the right thing.
Yeah. And when a man says whatever you want to do, when we're talking about an unplanned pregnancy, that's not leading. It's not even. It's really putting the entire burden of the decision upon a woman under the guise of women's rights.
And what is a woman going to have to do at that point when he says, well, whatever you want to do? Well, guess what? She's going to get out of her feminine, out of the star of the show, out of everything else, and she's going to go into her masculine, and she's going to take care of the problem the way she sees fit in her own mind. You've just, and what happens when that happens? Women, as well as men, they get this way, but they get overwhelmed. Their stressors exceed their ability to cope. So what do they want to do? Remove the biggest stressor in their life as quickly as possible. And when they do that, abortion is one of those avenues that they choose to do it. It's quick, it's easy, it's a short-term fix for a longer-term problem, and it's going to create longer-term problems. But we need to emphasize this, not only amongst our families, but amongst our church groups, amongst everybody. Our men's groups are all across the country need to be talking about this, on how we should lead. Because, I mean, if you look online right now, go to anybody that is criticizing you, they're still complaining that men don't lead anymore, that men aren't men anymore. The feminists are even complaining about that right now themselves. They're saying, not that they're saying I don't need a man. Yeah, you don't need a man if he's not leading, if he's not, being direct in communication. He's more of a burden for you than anything else. It takes women out of their feminine and puts them into their masculine. And once they're in their masculine, they're not going to do the same things.
How do we counteract that?
Well, I mean, you're starting in this situation. You've got a great organization.
I do, and I have a lot of support from people like you, from many people who have been in the pro-life movement a lot longer than I have. I think there's a lot of momentum right now in the pro-life movement on the focus and the understanding that we've been ignoring men for 52 years, and I just use that number because that's when Roe versus Wade, 53 years now. But we've been ignoring men in good faith in the protection, the pursuit of saving babies, saving women. But by ignoring the men, we've allowed the pro-choice movement to say, sit down, shut up, stay silent, my body, my choice. And then we, as the pro-life movement, have ignored them and haven't called them to something greater. So it's almost like, passive acquiescence to the idea that men aren't needed in this. And I think that now there's just a lot of momentum in the understanding in the pregnancy care centers, in the pro-life movement as a whole. In DC at Celebrate Life this week, there's multiple panels on fathers, on men. At CareNet coming up, there's a ton of speakers on men and fathers. At Heartbeat International, an organization called Mission Preborn announced grants that they'll be giving to pregnancy care centers who start fatherhood programs. And that was my first time ever to exhibit at a conference. And I had nothing except a banner. And I had 104 different pregnancy care centers come up and say, what do you have for a fatherhood curriculum? Like, they get it. They get that, like you said, men are the biggest influence in their partner's decision to choose life or to choose abortion. And when that man says, whatever you want to do, what the woman hears is, I'm sorry, I can't even make a decision about whether or not we should have a baby. I'm probably not responsible enough for you to have a child with.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And they start to doubt their men. They start to go down that road. But, we have to make it attractive for men too. I realize that, we are, you and myself and many others are involved in the church and the church ministries, but we talk about prayer a lot in those movements. We talk about, things that we should or should not do. It becomes a little bit of a moral judgment. Sometimes when we're reaching out to these men, because these men who we're going to have to reach out to, they're not in a church. They're not there. They don't go to church, although we're seeing a resurgence of conservative men going to church right now. It's still less than 20% of the younger population is actually going to church on any regular basis. How do we get them in that movement? I mean, we look at what men want inherently in this situation. I always say, the vastness of the universe, you feel insignificant in the universe, but pro-life movement gives you an opportunity to be very significant and change the course of history almost every single solitary day. Saving one baby can change the entire world. Look at Pope John Paul II. He was supposed to be aborted. He changed the entire world. Justin Bieber, he was supposed to be aborted. He changed the movement, the music movement. So did Celine Dion in this situation. She was supposed to be aborted. We go back to the H.G. Wells time machine. We have a guy who goes off the path and steps on a butterfly and the entire world changes. Well, for every baby that you save during this time, it's going to influence the world, and your actions are going to echo throughout time because you saved that baby, whether it be your own baby or whether it be somebody you get involved in the pro-life movement. And when you empower men to say, I can change the universe, that's action-based oriented. We can do something. How do you go about doing that? Hey, man, we need people on the sidewalk. We don't need them to necessarily talk to women. We need them to talk to the boyfriends. We also need them to keep order out on the sidewalk. Nothing worse than a chaotic sidewalk out there. It'll cause a lot of problems. Women will still go to the abortion mill. They'll still kill their babies. They'll be even more scared of us. Why not be more like Wyatt Earp, where just take a little look and say, look, if anything goes wrong, keep that place under control. Bring those masculine qualities back to the sidewalk. Bring them back to action taking, something that you can do in life to change the world. And saving one baby, even if you're a small part of that, changes the world indefinitely. What was the quote by Oscar Schindler? Save one life and you save the world entire. It can't be any truer than that.
So being on the sidewalk, and I get that. I can see that having a male presence, it serves multiple purposes, like you just said. You have people to make sure that there's no chaos. You have people to talk to the dads, which I think is a really big deal.
I think it is.
And I'll ask you, you mentioned how you approach the men in those situations. Have there been times when you've said, hey, you want the baby, and he's agreed? Well, then go tell her that, and they have?
Yeah, there's been one occasion. Most of the time, they'll text her and they'll back off, and they won't have the confidence to do it. But there has been one time where I've been involved in a save in DC with one of those people.
And
So
that's
in
a
the
big
DC
deal.
area. And this is something that we have to do. And you just have to be personable. You don't have to be some weird person out there. Just go out, have a good time. I sing, I dance, I enjoy myself. I meet people with a smile. I talk sports with the dads. Every once in a while I'll get Michael New, who I think is one of the best people in this movement. He is leading by example by going out to that sidewalk each and every day in Washington, D.C. I'll give him a pack of cigarettes and say, hey, man, if they needed a cigarette, offer them a cigarette in this situation. Bond with them, know what's going on. And that's what we have to do generally with the men that we're in our groups. We have to bond with them. We have to do things with them. We have to instill confidence in them. A lot of them are being raised up by women in a single woman household, and they're craving masculinity. And what are we doing in the pro-life movement? We only show what the women are doing and how they're keeping their babies. We're not showing the dads out there who stepped up and are working hard to get this out there. We're not showing those things. We're not interacting with them, whether it be at the gym. I interact with a lot of young men at the gym, and they are conservative and they want to know what to do and they want to know how to act. I evangelize to them not only in pro-life but in the Christian sense. We need to give them guidance because they are starving for it now. And where are they going? To Andrew Tate. We need them to come to us, biblical men with biblical masculinity.
Yes. So then going to the gym, I think that's I know that's important to you. That's important to me, for my own sanity. And there is a sense of community, and and there's a sense of camaraderie, because everybody's there for the most part for the same reason, just to get stress out. Excuse me, to get stress out and to and to do hard things, and I think men thrive on doing hard things. I think that's something that we need to do, and I think we're currently in a society where for a lot of young men the hardest thing that they do is respawn on Fortnite, and sit, and work out their thumbs, and it's not really doing hard things, and I don't want to
But
get in a debate with a
it's
video game enthusiast who's going to tell me how much harder it is than anything else that I do. But it's passive activities, and not just video games, but it's passive activities that remove us from community, that remove us from society.
a little bit. Yeah, the community's gotten a little bit better since you and I grew up on video games in this situation. I mean, I don't know what Fortnite is, but I assume it's also got to be one of those games that is engaged in fighting and conquering different things. So what I always tell these kids, they come up to me and say, well, I play Fortnite. I say, well, in real life, I fight evil. That's my job. And they're like, well, how do you fight evil? And one of my stories I always tell them is, well, they were selling women's body parts out of the University of New Mexico, and I stopped that network. Wow, they were selling body parts. What were they doing? So we'll go into that entire situation. Or one of my favorite is I describe the late term abortion procedure from an outpatient standpoint. And what they do is they dope women up with fentanyl, Oxycontin, and Versed. They induce labor and they send them to a hotel room. And when they come back and they're ready to deliver, they deliver the dead baby outside. But what ends up happening, and we've exposed this nationally, Shelley Sella, who is a protege of both Tiller and Boyd in the situation, there was a rape victim that came to her clinic in probably 2013, 14, and she was staying at a hotel room and alone. And she called the clinic and said, I can't get back. She's doped up on Versed, Oxycontin, and fentanyl. They said, leave the door open and deliver the baby into the toilet and we'll come get you. And that's exactly what happened. So I tell men, you want to be a hero? You want to have an opinion? When a woman is doped up on Oxycontin, fentanyl, and Versed in a hotel room with the door open, for anybody to come in, giving birth to a stillborn on a toilet. We not only have a right to act as men, we have a duty to act as men at that point. We need to act in those situations. And if we don't, we're turning a blind eye to evil. And you tell these stories to these young men, and they're like, yeah, I agree. We need to do something. Great. How can you help? This is how you can help. Go out to your local legislatures, go out to the sidewalks, go out to all these places, get involved in the movement, and make sure your girl never goes through anything like that whatsoever. And you do that by leading. And when you have those conversations and when you have those things, even if it's in the video game, if you go down and play video games with them or the gym or do something that they enjoy, you can impart those knowledge or those things to them. And I think our church has gotten away from that, at least the Catholic Church. The Knights of Columbus are all in their 70s. They don't do those type of things anymore. We don't have those activities anymore. And we don't have that opportunity to say to those men, by doing things together, this is how we should act.
Right. Like mentoring.
Yes.
Bringing them along for the ride, giving them an example, showing them what it means to be a man because they're right there alongside you.
But on the same course, they're doing that for you too. Iron sharpens iron. And yes, as we get older, and they are giving us advice, and we're learning from them as well as them learning from us. This empowers them. It gives them confidence. It allows them to do things as men should do things. Take action. Stop the evil. Fulfill your right. They're going to Fortnite for the same thing that I watched as a kid with the superheroes. They want to have that fantasy world where they can conquer and do stuff. And that is the only opportunity that it's being afforded to them. If we can show them pro-life gives you that opportunity, we can have more men in pro-life.
Yeah, I really like that you said that because it's not something that I thought about. But when I think about video games and I think about even Grand Theft Auto or, and we don't, my kids are little. We don't have a lot of video games in this house. They just play Minecraft, which has, I don't know if you're familiar, but it has 0 point and 0 end, and it just goes on forever.
My son works for Roblox, so I'm very familiar with Minecraft.
So Minecraft is just, I've gotten sucked in before where I've laid on the couch and played for 8 hours and realized that I just spent 8 hours building a house that it's not real and I will never finish. Like there's just no point. And so for me, it's very frustrating, but my kids love it. But anyway,
it gives them a sense of accomplishment. They accomplished something. They built a house.
It does.
They
and
did something manly. Not in the real world, but they're doing it in the fantasy world.
But these other games, these role-playing games, you're right. It is that action, that adventure, that whether they're the hero or the villain in the game, they're out there fighting, doing masculine things through the character. And I really appreciate you saying that because that's not something that I had thought about. But you're right. And it shows that desire in boys and young men to live that. And this is the avenue that they have right now to pursue that because, those people that may not have any other opportunity to pursue those types of masculine traits except through role playing. And so that's a really good thought. And I appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, and I just think we have to give those opportunities, not only in the pro-life movement, but as Catholics, as Christians, as in our religious faith as well. And I think there are out there. I think there's a lot of different things that we can do. I mean, back in the old days, in the history of the old world, we used to do rescue in the pro-life movement because that was one of the only opportunities we had. Well, you look at the masculine guys, Troy Newman, Schindler, Bobby Schindler, and it's not Bobby, Joe Scheidler. You look at those people who went out to the clinics and did the rescues, Patrick Mahoney at the time. They were doing masculine things. They were saving babies.
Tell us what rescues are.
What's that?
Tell us what rescues are in the context.
So rescues back in the day, the people would go into the clinics and chain themselves into the clinics and prevent the abortions from happening in the clinics. And they would have these gigantic rescues. One of the ones that I can remember, I wasn't involved. I just drove through it at the time, was in Wichita in 1991, the Summer of Mercy. where national pro-lifers all over the country just kept, blocking the clinics, doing whatever they could. It's illegal now under the FACE Act, but it was a very masculine trait because they were doing something and they thought they were closing the clinics at that particular time. It's hard for us to do that now because there's the FACE Act and all the laws. There's a lot more state FACE Acts, but if we can find something for men to do like that, like the White Rose Rescue is doing with protests in this situation, I think we can tap into those masculine traits and get them away from Fortnite and into the real world where they're actually fighting evil and doing masculine things.
Yeah. So you've brought up the White Rose Resistance several times. How would you contrast what you just referred to as protests to the sidewalk counseling?
So if we looked at, we saw an excellent example of this. Lauren Handy, who's an incredible woman, one of the best sidewalk counselors in this nation, got arrested in 2020 for going in the Red Rose Rescue and going in and occupying a clinic. And she ended up serving, I don't know how many years, about a year, but she was sentenced to almost 62 months or 57 or 62 months. I can't remember right offhand, but she actually invaded the clinic, broke laws. You don't have to break laws to protest. You don't have to break laws at all. You can protest legally from the side. You can do more now without breaking laws than you can breaking laws in the situation. They took Lauren Handy off the sidewalk, who is an unbelievable counselor. I mean, I've watched her. There are a few in the country that will rival Lauren Handy. She was off the sidewalk for a year. She saved more babies than a lot of people I know out there. And, but she broke the law in order to bring attention to the entire situation. By sidewalk counseling, by protesting, by doing those things legally, you can be out on that sidewalk, express your opinions, and you can save babies. I suggest that you protest at a different time than when women are going in, because you're going to create anxiety amongst those women, and that's going to push them in the doors.
Right.
But I think you can do that.
Do you think that the church has remained too silent on this issue? And here's what I mean. So as a statement, right? As an overall statement, the Catholic Church is what I'm most familiar with. Will come out and say we oppose abortion, like it is against the Catholic Church. In the church, in the sermons, from the altar, from my own perspective, and I realize there's lots of churches. From my own perspective, in 47 years, I have never heard a sermon preached from the altar by a Catholic priest about abortion. And I think that contributes to the silence.
I think you're right that there's a silence in this situation, that in the Catholic Church that's out there. I have a friend who I have two friends. One was a great priest, and he always talked about abortion. He's no longer a priest now. He's resigned, but he grew up under Bishop Strickland, and that was one of his mentors in life. And Bishop Strickland, if you haven't heard him, he'll preach about abortion anytime you talk to him. He has no qualms about it. He is a man of God, and he has the courage of a lion in this situation. So I highly recommend you listen to Bishop Strickland. But I had another friend who was a priest, and I said, why don't you ever preach about abortion? He said, then I get letters, I get complaints to the bishop, I get complaints to here, I get complaints to there. I don't want to deal with this. And I said, isn't that not being masculine in this situation? Because he was a weightlifter like me. And he goes, probably, but I just don't want to deal with it. And that's the thing I see about the church is we'll pray about it. But do we want to do anything about it? Action is the key. I don't think they're silent. I just think they're not taking action. I think, they're passive, and passive, praying, hoping for the best in this situation. In my mind, and I may be wrong, the power of prayer is great, but prayer without action in my mind is a little bit, I guess I wouldn't feel masculine if I had just prayer. Prayer with action, I do.
If the priest, and just to use the priest as an example, if the priest or preacher, because I've talked to several people who are not Catholic and they see this as a universal thing. So if the priest or pastor is just praying about it, right, but not speaking about it, then what are the chances that everyone else in the pews is praying about it? Like, it hasn't been told to them that it's important. So why would they be praying about it? And then you've got the other side of it, which is the people in the pews, the 20 to 25% of people sitting in the pews who have been impacted by abortion, who aren't being preached the message of forgiveness, who aren't being preached the message of redemption, in a specific way. And that's a lot of people. I mean, 20 to 25% of the people in the pews have been impacted by abortion. Like, that's a lot to be sitting there, not, and I was one of those people, not knowing that because from a Catholic perspective, if you go read the catechism, it's not a good outlook. So from my perspective, to not hear anybody say anything, is worse than having the conversation. And so it's not leadership. We're talking about masculinity, and I love that you said that to the priest and that he admitted it. But like, we're talking about masculinity and we're talking about leadership, and are the churches really leading on this issue if they're being passive and not even bringing it up to the people that they're there to serve?
That's a question. I mean, I see a lot of priests that will support the pregnancy centers, in their banquets and everything else. They'll do it on the side. They support me. I mean, publicly, they don't mention me in the sermons in any way whatsoever,
Right.
but they come up secretly and do that. Again, I mean, is that leading? I don't necessarily think that's leading in this situation. I think we need more leadership from the church, not only in speaking, but in doing things. One of the priests out here is a really good guy. He goes out to the clinic all the time, and he's Eastern Rite, and he goes out there every day, and he leads by example, and his entire parish follows him. This is what a pastor does. This is what a shepherd does. A shepherd goes out and he takes his people, and leads them out on the sidewalk by example. Everybody in his parish knows he does that, and he makes it a point. Does he preach every homily about abortion? Not often, but he's out there every day. So there is other ways to lead in this situation. But we have to lead with a benevolent fist as a pastor in this situation. I mean, we've got to be good and not be yelling at our people every 5 seconds, but we also have to give them grace, but we have to be stern enough to tell our people this is what we need to do. We don't want to act like a crazy person, but we also want to make sure that, we're not letting our parishioners run all over us. I mean, I've seen it after Mass when I have a deacon by the name of Deacon Vic at Annunciation Parish in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and he'll preach about abortion. And the minute he walks out, he looks me in the eyes. He goes, "Well, I haven't heard any complaints yet, but the written ones will follow, and I don't care." That's what we need to have from men in our society. I don't care if they're going to complain or not. I did the right thing.
Yes, because we're not here for. What did I tell somebody today who told me that I posted something on Threads about biblical masculinity, and almost all, like, it drew everybody that opposes men and that supports abortion to the post. And so it was, all the comments were negative, which is fine because that means I'm reaching the people that I'm trying to reach. If everybody that saw it, liked it, cheered it, agreed it, then that does nothing but stroke my ego, and I was trying to explain this to somebody, who didn't really care what I was saying, but I was arguing with them anyway. And I was trying to explain to him that I'm a grown man. I'm not a 14-year-old girl trying to get clicks on my Threads things. I'm trying to affect a change, and so I want to reach the people who disagree with me, because the people that agree with me are already on my side. Like, I don't need to reach them. And so, if you're getting pushback, then you're probably doing something right. And abortion is an uncomfortable topic because nobody ever talks about it. And so, especially among men, right? Men don't, remove us from our jobs and what it is that we do and what our passion in life is. And think about, like, how often men get together and talk about abortion outside of the context of people that we just happen to know because of what we do for a living. It's just not it's not a topic that men, put above.
Well, I'm a trial lawyer for a living. I mean, that's what I do. I'm a lawyer. Am I pro-life? Yes. I mean, I don't get paid by the pro-life community at all. I don't have any donations from them. I've never really had any donations from them in the entire, less than maybe 5,000 for a paralegal at one particular time. I'm self-funded by mainly the abortion industry because I take these on contingency cases. And I do well, but not extremely well. But when I go in to the gym, I have those conversations about abortion. Occasionally, I think they might think I have Tourette's because I'm watching CNN and I'm yelling at the CNN. That's not what happened in that particular case. I was there, and they're trying to figure out why I'm upset about it all. But it intrigues them, and they want to talk about this issue. And, I represent, what do? I represent women hurt by the abortion industry. I absolutely have a right to do that as a lawyer, as a man. I have a right to speak about it. And if they don't like it, heck with it. I mean, late-term abortion exists. Abortion is dangerous. The abortion pill is going to kill people. I'm going to say it from the rooftops for the people in the back. I don't care. We need to get this information out. And if we don't, then we have a society that is going to continue to go to the abortionists, realizing that it's unsafe.
Amen. So then how do we get men talking about it? Like in this context, I'm talking about men, in our generations, like how do we get, I'm not talking about the young men, but the people who will mentor, the people who will lead the young men. Like, how do we get them talking about it? How do we get them to take action? Other than by being an example, like how can we get them excited about being masculine in the sense that failing to stand up against abortion is a failure of masculinity?
So you're talking about men our age in
That's
the
right.
situation who are not talking about it. Inside the church or outside the church?
Both. My original thought was inside the church because I believe that when the priests and the pastors aren't talking about it, it opens the door for men not to think it's important enough for them to talk about, but also outside of the church.
So inside the church, when you go to church, when I went to church, there are organizations that are out there. For instance, the Knights of Columbus in the Catholic Church, men's Bible studies in the Protestant Church. We need to have, as men who are involved in the pro-life movement, honest conversations with those people about the dangers of abortion, about how it hurts your family, and how it's going to affect you. It may not affect you right now with your current family here, but your grandchildren, they might go and have an abortion. They might be affected by a woman who has an abortion in this situation. How are you going to teach your boys to lead? How are you going to teach your girls? How are you going to teach them what is a good man and what is a bad man? Those are the things that we need to be talking about in church every single solitary day. We need to be talking and raising our families, number one, to recognize the problems with abortion, how to lead, and frankly, for our women to recognize people who can lead them in the future. So I think those are conversations that we need to have amongst our family, our friends, everybody that we can. Outside in the world, I take the Destiny Hernan De La Rosa movement of I'm going to talk to everybody I know about abortion and about this situation. Destiny told me one time, I talk to the Uber drivers, I talk to the restaurant people, I do the same thing. I talk about it wherever I go. And, sometimes people are a little shy about it. But if you start talking about stuff that is kind of interesting, almost serial killerish, like Curtis Boyd, oh my God, they open up like there's no tomorrow. They can't get enough of it. I talked to people all over the country. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. They sold body parts? No way. And I've got a whole case on it. They're doing late-term abortions. I can show you videos of what's going on. Find that hook because you can talk about it and they'll listen. And the other thing is one thing we do as trial lawyers, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this or read up about it, but we use a book called The Reptile. And The Reptile says that you have to invade the safety of those people in on your jury. You have to make it so it will affect them. How is this situation going to affect them? How is abortion going to affect the regular everyday person? Well, 1 in 4 women are going through it. 1 in 4 women are going through it, which means 1 in 4 men are. But think about this from a standpoint in this situation. Abortion in women causes alcoholism, depression, anxiety, sometimes even a worse sex life. I said, do you want your wife or your daughter to have a worse sex life because of abortion? Do you want him to have infertility because the abortion pill, they didn't take Rogam when they took that abortion pill, and now they have infertility and they're affecting your grandbabies at that particular time? Do you want them to be pressured by a man who's gone through abortion? Do you want them to even get involved with a man who's going to say, I don't know, what do you want to do? I mean, these are things that are going to improve the quality of our men, generally out there. In the general public, we have to get that information out. And the liberal press, I'll tell you, they drown me out more than they drown anybody else out in the entire world. They don't want to hear about the malpractice of abortion. They rarely get it out there. I have to search for articles when I post on the internet of what actually happened in those situations. And I do have some good context at the journal that get it out, but it's a very small and in between thing. This is a really grassroots effort. And, one of the amazing things that I learned is not in my backyard also works, which is nobody wants an abortion clinic in their neighborhood. And that is something I learned from the sanctuary cities, from the unborn, is, their own town, their own neighborhood, they don't want that stuff in. That's for downtown, in Los Angeles or New Orleans or Dallas, Texas, or Washington, D.C. That's not for my neighborhood. And when you can show that it affects their neighborhood, they will enact laws that says we don't want this abortion clinic here. And that's how we got the sanctuary city efforts in the most liberal state in the country to get 4 cities and 2 counties to say, we are not going to put up with abortion in our neighborhood. Not in my backyard works extremely well. Get involved in your local community and keep the pressure up.
So it's all about, it does come down to those who are passionate about it, leading by example, talking about it in every opportunity that they have, and sharing what the actual impact is. The impact on the people, the impact on the community, so that people feel that personal connection to abortion, so that they can then talk about it as well.
I think also it is listening to the other side. And what they say. They have mantras and everything else, but listening to their objections and fairly meeting them with the truth. We can't go off and say late-term abortion is rampant throughout the United States. It's about 1.8%. There are 2 types of late-term abortions that are out there. First, you get the hospital late-term abortions, which are mainly for fetal anomalies. And the hospitals will only do them for fetal anomalies. In the hospital settings, the Ryan Residency Program, which is the biggest training program in the country for abortionists, has made it extremely clear that we will only do them in hospitals, and we will only do them for fetal anomalies because the risk to the woman is so high. Now, there are clinics. Curtis Boyd was doing up to the date of birth until 2022. Warren Hearn just retired this year in 2025. You have the Valley Abortion Group. I'm going to tell your viewers this, which goes by VAG out here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which will go up to 32 weeks. You have Alamo, which will go up to 32 weeks now in Albuquerque, New Mexico. They have resurfaced in the last 3 months.
All for elective purposes?
Elective, it doesn't matter what they'll do. Elective. They'll tell you it's for fetal indications.
Right.
But if somebody comes in, they're going to do a late term abortion. Horvath will do that out there in College Park, Maryland, and Sant'Angelo and the DuPont Center will do it in Washington, D.C. There's a couple that'll go up to 28, 29 weeks. But not to the date of birth all over the country. The problem is above 25 weeks. Even Curtis Boyd, the worst abortionist in the entire world, the biggest killer, will tell you each week you go past 18 weeks, it is more risky than going through a delivery. He puts that in his consent forms. And each week you go, the higher the risk of death, the higher the problems. They still do it anyway, just in these outpatient clinics. However, how we prevailed against these late term abortionists is we said, look, if it's late term, you have to have a 24-hour monitoring program. It has to be in a hospital or hospital like setting. You have to monitor these girls all the time. And if you don't, it's per se malpractice. So we're seeing the disappearance of late term abortion on an elective basis a little bit at a time. But, we still have elective abortions done in hospitals under Medicaid for in the Ryan residency for fetal anomalies. And some of those anomalies that I've seen them do them for are cleft palates and club feet, which, those aren't my co-counsel in these cases was born with a cleft palate. So I think he's okay. But I mean, this is where they're going towards these type of fetal anomalies in the future. So, I mean, late term abortion is going to exist in the hospitals and in outpatient. It's going to become increasingly rare, but it's not everywhere across this country. And we need to honestly say this is the case. We can't over exaggerate our position. If you practice law for any period of time, the one thing that you need with a jury is credibility. And that's what we need in the pro-life movement is credibility in all that we do.
Yeah. So if you can talk about it, where does this fight take you next?
Well, a couple of things. Right now, I've been fighting the Ryan residency program. I'm commending the people that are going to do the Planned Parenthood Defund tomorrow, the big webcast. They're doing a great job. They're pushing to get rid of any dollar that doesn't go to abortion is really important. But the Ryan residency is the future of abortion. And this is a training program that's out there. So I've been on a crusade to end that. I've got to stop the rest of late term abortion throughout the country. So I'm going to team up with Father Frank and the Priest for Life staff over there towards the end of the summer to bring some more attention to late term abortion and its effects all over the country. We have hundreds of hours of videos, thousands of documents regarding late term abortion that we'll be sharing. Live Action has been doing a wonderful job with late term abortion and exposing that. So I think that's part of it. The other part is going to be a little bit more quiet on where I'm going. I've got a couple of cases, a couple on the abortion pill. I think we're going to highlight those later next year when they go to trial. One on a informed consent case with a 26-week-old baby here in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who was aborted by a mother who is addicted to meth, and she didn't like that. And when she kind of got through the fog, she realized what she's done, and we've sued for wrongful death of the baby. We've actually gotten a ruling from a district court judge here in New Mexico that says that the baby is a person under the Wrongful Death Act. And I think that's a very important step for New Mexico in general, being so liberal. But I've got a wrongful death estate for the baby already set up. So that one's going to be moving along towards trial. Also, there's a little bit of things that we got to chip away at in society. Like they do prospective releases for malpractice liability in a lot of the informed consents. And I've been suing under the Unfair Trade Practices Act to get rid of these prospective releases of liability for, quote, healthcare. Because I think it's just as a matter of law and public policy, you cannot prospectively release malpractice liability. There's other things that they're doing, releasing emotional distress liability, saying that they're not going to be held responsible for certain fees. I'm using my background as a consumer lawyer in that sense to bring these consumer issues up inside these cases to clean up the informed consent and level the playing field for women who are harmed by abortion generally by going after them under the Unfair Trade Practices Act.
The you said something that the person that New Mexico, you got a New Mexico ruling that said that under the wrongful death suit that the baby was a person. This is a baby which was aborted. So here's my question. What implications could that have? If we're talking about personhood in an aborted baby, that's that's the argument, right?
That's
Like that's
exactly
the
the
whole
argument.
argument. So
That's why I took the case.
so I mean, because you said your words were it's a really big deal in New Mexico in a liberal state, and I get what you mean, that the idea that a judge in a liberal state would rule that way is a really big deal. But what I heard was this is a really big deal everywhere, because that's not going to stop in New Mexico.
It is and it isn't. I mean, in certain states, we can do this as a person of the Wrongful Death Act. I mean, Texas would be very easy to do it. But here's my thought on this. Every chance that we get as pro-lifers, we need to make that baby a person with rights, because you can't kill something that has rights. Period. End of story. Whatever has rights, you can't kill it. I mean, for instance, pets, pretty much you can't kill. In New Mexico, it's better to be a pet because you won't get a digoxin injection to the heart like an unborn baby will. But anything that has rights, you can't kill. So if you make a baby a person under the Wrongful Death Act, that's a chipping away a little bit at a time. If you decide to have child support from the moment of conception, that baby has rights that are now enforceable. If you have inheritance rights for the baby in this situation, can you kill something that it's entitled to inherit? And I mean, if we're going to make the argument for personhood, we don't start by going through the front door and bashing in the Supreme Court saying, we want personhood. We start by making the baby a person, piece by piece by piece across this country, whether it be at your local level, your national level, in the courts, in the legislature. Every right you can give that baby makes it harder to kill. So yes, that is what my goal was. It's just a little chip. I'm a small cog in a much greater movement than I've ever been before, and a much greater, how would I put this? A much greater, I would say, much greater part of God's will is just doing it piece by piece. Why we have to always win at the national level at the biggest time overall is hard to do. We need to chip away, and we will chip away. I
Like, how
have
do you
no
eat an
doubt.
elephant, right?
One bite at a time.
That's right.
And you got it exactly. And I think if we take that approach to personhood, and I didn't think of this myself. There was a New York City professor during the time that Roe versus Wade was litigated. If you watch the movie Roe versus Wade, he actually filed a complaint on behalf, not complaint, for guardianship of all the unborn babies that were killed by abortion. Way back in 1972, we got off that track. We need to get back on that track.
So, how are you doing on time? Because you just brought up something that
I got plenty of time today.
Because it's not something that I thought about, but I'm going to geek out on legal stuff now. So, so you brought up child support from conception.
Correct.
So I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that. And then I probably
I think just generally it's the right thing to do. The left complains about, we never get child support from conception on at that particular time. Great. There's expenses, there's stuff that we can do. Child support from conception is a great thing. The other reason I like it is in New Mexico, if the mother doesn't assert child support, the child can.
So let me ask you if you've thought about this. What happens in a scenario like if you're gonna formulate a law that says child support from conception, which I agree with you, right? I think that that the expenses of being pregnant, the expenses of maternity, I should say, the expenses of having a baby, that should be borne by both parents. So, if what would happen, just to play devil's advocate, if I'm paying child support because my significant other is pregnant, and then she chooses to have an abortion?
I think for me, I think child support immediately stops. However, I mean, you could hold women accountable in this situation and say, "Hey, you had the abortion, you have to refund everything," or you could just be a regular dude. I mean, one of the things that I've learned in life is not every wrong that you incur in life should be redressed. And sometimes you just got to say, yeah, sometimes you just got to suck it up. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
You got the lady pregnant, suck it up. You need to support her. I mean, that's the messages it sends.
Right.
Whether she has the abortion or not, I'll tell you this: if the abortion is for financial reasons, that's not going to be the reason she aborts. Then, if you're paying child support, is it now?
Right. So here's what made me think of that is there's, and I'm not really familiar with this. I'm just going to tell you what my understanding from hearing it in social media is. Like, there's some proposal that for a larger child tax credit. Like, let's say that's what it is, and people questioning, well, if Trump is pro-life, why wouldn't he give that credit to women from the moment of conception? And then the argument against that is people would take the credit and then have the abortion anyway. So then they've got the money, so it incentivizes pregnancy, but it doesn't incentivize delivery. And so my thought being, and look, I don't believe that people are inherently evil. But I do believe that there are opportunistic people. And so then my thought would be, or my question, I guess, the issue that I can see would be people getting pregnant, taking the money, not using it for their pregnancy because they don't intend to deliver the baby. So taking the money up until the point where, they can hopefully, in their mind, it is safely end the pregnancy. And then they benefited financially off of the dad. And look, I think there's ways to formulate laws to resolve this. It's just the thought that I had whenever you brought it up, because I agree with you. Like I said, I agree with you. I think pregnancy is expensive. I've all of our pregnancies were when we were married. So but I would hope that I would have paid for half of it, if we weren't married, because that's the right thing to do. But like you said, if financial concerns are the reason that somebody is getting an abortion, and we fix those financial concerns, I don't know. It's something to really think about. I love that you brought it up, because it's usually brought up by pro-choicers, And so I like that as an attorney who is a pro-life attorney, that you brought that up as a positive thing. Because I did family law for 10 years, and I would disagree, I think, with a lot of the family law attorneys, at least here in Louisiana, about the child support. I've had several colleagues say that child support is unfair, it's overly burdensome, it's too high. And I got 5 kids. Like there's nobody's paying. I shouldn't say nobody. I've had some clients who make a ton of money, but most people, the average person is not paying enough child support to support the child. I'm not saying I think they should pay more, because I don't know what their financial situation is, but it certainly isn't excessive, as it relates to whether or not that child is being supported. So
I'm divorced. I pay child support. I paid every dime. I happily pay child support. I didn't even modify it after one of my kids turned 18. I just figured, why do I want to fight anymore? It's only tearing the people apart, and child support does that. But it's also my responsibility, and I think that's part of being masculine as well, is owning your responsibility, whether it be for your mistakes or whether it be for your children or whether it be for anything, your job, everything. Own your responsibility. In this day and age, I see it so many times. I don't hire employees like this anymore. Well, I didn't do that because I had this victim mentality in the situation. When I see that from guys, I'm like, come on, man, step up. I need you to step up. And I think that's lost in today's society is, going back and circling back, I'm switching lanes on you in a little bit here without a blinker, but, you know, um, going back to the responsibility, not being a victim and not being anything else, I think that's part of being masculine. And part of being masculine is nobody's coming to save you. You got to do this on your own. You got to be strong. We can have people who encourage you, but you got to do this on your own. We have to empower those people to be masculine. Victim mentality these days is allowing people not to be masculine anymore. And, the fact that somebody duped you by getting pregnant, and then, I hate to say this, but getting pregnant and then aborting your baby just to get some money, well, that's on you too, man. Look at the person you're picking as a partner. Let's do a little bit better, vetting. You got to look for those red flags that are out there, brother. And it's us. It's
And
time for
maybe
us
that
to
would dissuade people from having casual sex. You know,
possibly,
if you
yeah.
know that if somebody gets pregnant, it's not as easy as, oh, well, she'll just go get an abortion and maybe she'll ask me to pay for half of the abortion. She might have a baby and you might have to start paying child support from the time that she's pregnant.
Yeah, well, and it also make
It's
sure
a
you vet your
fascinating
people.
thought. I love that you brought this up. This is something I
I
could think about a
mean,
lot.
you know, my dating history hasn't always been the best in the entire situation. I've had my own red flags. I've learned from them. I try to impart that to other people, but I have to pay for those mistakes myself too. So I didn't, I, yeah, I think you're a little bit more cautious once you've made those mistakes.
Yeah. And I really like what you're talking about with the victim mentality, because I think that's so prevalent in our society and it's such a big deal. And there's always an assumption that people are being a victim. When I share my story about losing my child to abortion, and then the impact of that being, failing out of college 3 times, going on a 7-year methamphetamine addiction, ending up homeless, unemployed, waiting for the police to come into a hotel room while I was overdosing on the floor. You know, the comments are, you'll blame anybody but yourself. And here's the thing, and I want to be very clear for the 65,000th time, like, it's my fault. Like, it's my fault or I bear responsibility in the pregnancy. I bear responsibility in the fact that we didn't have a conversation about what would happen if she got pregnant. I bear responsibility in the fact that my child was aborted. That doesn't change everything that happened after that. You know, I am responsible for all of that. That's one of the reasons that it hit me so hard. That's one of the reasons that it was so difficult to deal with, is because it was my responsibility. I am not a victim in this at all. And that's why it was necessary once I went to treatment for me to pick myself up and get my stuff together and get back on track, because the victim mentality keeps you there forever. And so it's really important what you said, because men are not victims. Men are not victims in the sense that we've been pushed aside in the abortion argument, because whether we were pushed aside by the pro-choice side or neglected by or overlooked by the pro-life side, we still sat on the sidelines. And that's not what men were meant to do. And there comes a point where it doesn't matter if this person's telling you, and it's what you're doing now, and it's what I'm doing now. It doesn't matter if these people are telling you, hey, you need to sit down and shut up. Like, no, no, I'm not going to sit down and shut up. Like, I'm going to keep talking about this because this is the right thing to do, no matter who tells me that it's not the right thing to do. And so it's really important that men not act like victims in any capacity, but in this capacity specifically, since this is what we're talking about.
I guess I was the benefit of an old football coach when I was in high school. I didn't play football for long, but I hurt myself. I broke a leg, and he got up. I coached him, and he got rest his soul. He's gone for a number of years now, but he looked at my leg and he said, "Rub some dirt on it and go get back in that game." And I know that's the wrong thing he did, but in a sense, it was the right thing. Is don't be a wimp. Don't be a victim. Get back in. Do what you need to do. Be a man. Go forward. Do this stuff. I know that's toxic masculinity these days, but that's the masculinity that, surprisingly, that these women want. it's like, oh my goodness, I love the current culture right now. It's I'm watching all these women get on there like, where are all the good men at? Well, they're all conservative. Well, they're not good men, but yes, those are the values that make us good men, is the
Yes.
conservative values. It's just the funniest thing that I see. They want us to be masculine but not masculine, and it's just like, it's one of the most frustrating things. But you can see what's happening in this society. They've been told they don't need a man. They're independent women. Look, I need a woman too. I mean, the masculine and feminine are both crucial to everyday beautiful life. And it's not that I don't like the red pill guys any more than I like the feminists in this situation. I think there's a delicate balance in between the two. That's why the Andrew Tates need to go away, and that's why feminism in its current form is cancer. We need a delicate balance between the two, and we need our men to be masculine, and when they're in their masculine, the women will relax and be in their feminine, and when they're in their feminine, they will do incredible things.
Yeah. And when women are in their
So,
feminine, then men will be masculine.
yes.
It's the way that God created us, to be complementary in union with each other. And so it's
I think he does like to laugh every once in a while on how he created us. I mean, there are a lot of fun situations that you can look back on now. But I mean, like you know what? I got divorced. It was my fault. I stopped leading the situation. I should have led. I should have led a lot better. I started to become more minded and oriented. But you know what? The great thing is I've got a God of second chances. He's a great God. He's an incredible God. And he brought me to the pro-life movement, and he gave me that second chance to learn how to lead. Still learning. I'm not the best of it at all. I still have those moments where I should be more in my masculine. But this movement has taught me more about leading than any other any other thing that I've ever done in my life, whether it be organized sports, whether it be in the courtrooms or anything else. This movement has taught me more about leading. When you ask for a chance to lead, God gives you plenty of chances to lead. And you're going to mess them up. I mean, there are beautiful women who I dated who I wish I was still dating because I didn't lead, even after I got divorced. We need to lead as men, and we need to do it in a biblical, masculine way. Like I said, we can sit back, direct the entire show like a salsa dance, and make that woman look unbelievably beautiful. Just make her the center of attention, and it only increases our value as men.
amen. Well, man, 10 years. 10 years is a long time to be in this fight. It's amazing the work that you've done. And I don't think we even really got to scratch the surface because both of us got excited about talking about men and masculinity and bringing that into the pro-life movement. So we're going to have to do this again. I also think you brought up some things that make me think that I've got some wheels spinning about different things that we may be able to do together and with some other men in this movement, to kind of catalyze, if that's a word, the young men, to be a catalyst for the young men. And
let me think about this, propose this, just put it
yeah,
in the back of your mind. I've been watching a lot of the men's movement in this situation. Men learn by doing things together. They're going on trips. They're doing canoe trips. They're doing these type of things together in this situation to learn and talk about masculinity outside the movement in this situation. Shouldn't our movement? I realize it's nice to have a men's movement that has, a lot of prayer and everything associated with it. We can still incorporate that. But wouldn't it be great to have a men's retreat for pro-lifers in this situation that is out in the wilderness doing something cool? I mean, I don't know why that appeals to me so much, but every time I've done that with men in the past, I've had a great time and enjoyed myself. Or doing masculine things together, whether it be weightlifting, anything else, having those type of retreats rather than just the retreat of prayer. So if you could think about that as in Men for Life, I would love to do something like that and be a part of it.
all right. I think that would be a great opportunity for us to get a bunch of men together in community and to do masculine things. but also to be able to have those conversations about how we bring the next generation forward, which is how we end it, right? I believe that reaching the next generation of men, building good, biblically masculine men who are protectors and providers and are pro-woman and pro-family, and pro-life, like that's how we're going to end abortion, because they're going to lead and they're going to instill that safety, in the women, and it's going to just change the course of everything. So I like that idea. It's not one I had thought about, so I'm glad you brought it up, because I think that's a lot of fun. And now we're talking about stuff that doesn't even need to be part of the podcast, but it's important. It is important. So if anybody has watched into the 90th minute, then we've already got you, and you are going to be invited to whatever type of outdoor whatever type of outdoor men's retreat we do. Well, Mike, I really appreciate you joining me, and I'm really excited to see what the next 10 years brings. Again, I want to congratulate you on 10 years and on all of the accomplishments that you've done. I know that we talked off camera about some things that you're working on that I'm really excited for you, and also the things that you shared on camera. But thanks again for joining us, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Same here. I really appreciate what you're doing for the men in this movement, and please keep up the good work.
Thank you. You too.